Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, I have an incredible channeling that covers a variety of topics, including the metaphysical significance of Om, using Om in meditation and service, the nature of the higher self, receiving calls for help, shedding costumes, the origin of the planet's name, Earth from the standpoint of social memory complexes, the variety of the Confederation's services to planet Earth, exploring autism, vacillation between service to self and service to others. I'm often asked, who is Quo? My best answer is, they're a group that are channeled. In particular, they are a group that is channeled by LL Research, an organization that's located in Kentucky that has been channeling with telepathic communications from a group known originally as Ra, and then later through a group called Quo, which is a compilation of different higher density social memory complexes. And their goal and intention is to help us along the spiritual path, to open our hearts, and to instruct us and guide us into being of greater service and understanding the world that we're in. We begin with Jim channeling. I am Quo, and am with this instrument at this time. We greet each in the love and light of the one infinite Creator, and we thank each of you for calling us to your circle of seeking today. It is a great honor to be here. By being here, we are able to proceed upon our own spiritual journey and walk with you closer and closer into unity with the one infinite Creator. We would, as always, suggest to you that it is very helpful if you would consider the words and thoughts that we express in our responses to your queries with a degree of salt, shall we say, exercising your own personal discrimination that will allow you to determine which of our words and thoughts are helpful. To you, use them as you will. And for those which are not perhaps useful at this time, to set them aside so that you may not worry about them. We do not wish to provide any stumbling blocks for those present. So with that perennial request being offered, we would ask if there is a query in which we could begin. I have a query. Quo, can you talk to us about the metaphysical significance of the sound vibration known in Hinduism as Om or Aum, spelled O-M or A-U-M? On January 3rd, 1999, Quo was recorded as describing this as a sound vibration that Ra partakes of in a more balanced fashion and likened it to what Earth people called music of the spirit. Can you please comment or elaborate on the metaphysical significance of the sound vibration we know as Om or Aum, and what can we learn from how Ra partakes of it in a more balanced fashion? I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother. This is a very basic, fundamental query concerning the nature of the creation. The one infinite Creator has created all that you see within the infinite universe as a means by which it may know itself better, and that each of the entities have the variety of levels of intelligence may also do the same on their journey back into unity with the one Creator. The sound which you have described as Om or Aum is a sound which is truly the sound of the creation, the sound of the various planets in each galaxy of the creation. There are an infinite number of these planetary surfaces and entities, beings who have an identifying type of vibration, which taken together can be heard in the spiritual sense by entities who begin to utilize that sound within their own meditative or seeking practices. This is the sound of how the Creator is vibrating or being felt and expressed by all the planetary spheres that create your solar systems and your galaxies. This is the music of the spheres. This is the sound of rejoicing in the spheres, the Creator, the spheres, the intelligences upon the spheres beginning to sing in harmony with each other. It is that unending mystery of symphony that always is apparent to those who have ears to hear and hearts to feel. This is the great nature of each entity within your creation, of each entity within this circle. For each of you also partakes of this kind of a sound that is the representation of how the Creator has made itself known to its material universe. The material being the planets, the people, the entities of all levels of intelligence and seeking on the spiritual journey. Each of you then may partake in this basic vibration of the universe, of the Creator, by saying this phrase or this word in your meditations, singing it, speaking it, feeling it, being it, allowing it to reverberate through every cell in your body, through every portion of your mind, through the infinite nature of your spirit, so that you partake in this which comes not only to you, but from you, whether you do attempt to sing the song of all or not. Attempting to sing it causes an intensification or a doubling effect of its effect upon you as you are singing the sound of the Om, the music of the spheres. This is the great song that all sing in one way or another as they partake in their spiritual journeys, moving back into unity with the one infinite Creator, the great conductor of the orchestra of creation. Is there a follow-up query, my brother? Yes, please, thank you, Quo. Based on my experiences and my studies of the sound vibration, I believe that Om, or Aum, is one of the Sanskrit sound vibration complexes that Ra referred to in session 74 that have power before time and space and represent configurations of light which built all there is. Can you confirm whether or not this is an accurate understanding, for lack of a better word? I ask in order to better understand how the sound vibration complex may be used in individual and group meditations in service to others. I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my brother. Yes, we will be glad to share the knowledge that we have that this Om, which is also seen and vocalized as the Aum, is a portion, a small portion, yet a basic portion of the Sanskrit type of language, which is basic to the nature of creation. There are various notes in this type of musical score that each person may utilize in a unique fashion, for each of you is unique in all of the creation, and the way that you would project such a note or sound vibration complex is unique unto yourself. Thus, as you attempt to reproduce the Om, it is well to consult your own inner intuition so as to feel and then express the feeling of the note of the vibration of equality that allows a greater and greater experience of the one infinite creation about you to begin to vibrate in harmony with the way you produce the note, the Om, the Om. This is a path which each may follow that accentuates and supports the spiritual journey. This type of singing of the Om is that which is a vibratory reproduction of your own inner nature, your own unique facet of the jewel of the one infinite Creator. This type of crystallized sound vibration is that which can help you to realize on a deep subconscious level within the deep mind the true nature of yourself as being one with all of the creation, with the Creator, and to be this in a fashion which is unique to yourself. Thus, as you proceed upon your own spiritual journey, this is that which helps you move along the path in unity with the one Creator and within each of its facets of those around you. Is there a further follow-up, my brother? No, thank you very much. I am Quo, and we thank you, my brother. At this time, we would transfer this contact to the one known as Austin. We are those of Quo. I am Quo, and now, with this instrument, as we settle into our connection with this instrument, we would offer an observation that we have spoken to before, but feel compelled again to express our appreciation for this circle and for supportive energy that has been generated by the ritual that this circle partakes in called the Round Robin. And we would remark upon how effective and meaningful this ritual is in order to establish contact with this circle and maintain a certain stability of energy thanks to the contributions of all present. We also feel the support from seekers and entities from all over your planet, as they come into contact with our words in one form or another. We cannot express enough our gratitude for this opportunity to connect with each soul who is moved by the content generated by this working. At this time, we would ask if there is a query to which we may respond. Yes, I have one. Ra states that the higher self is the end result of all the development experienced by the mind-body-spirit complex to that point. First question is, does each incarnated experience add to that? And if so, when the mid-level 6-density higher self acts as a reservoir for all the experiences, then if asked for guidance, can use this to guide a particular incarnated entity. I hope that makes sense. I am Quo, and I am aware of the query, my brother. Indeed, the description that you have offered of what is called the higher self matches our basic understanding of this divine gift given to the self by the self in order to help guide one upon the journey. Indeed, the higher self contains or has available to it the repository of all incarnational experiences of that entity up to that point. The higher self exists as a single point upon what can be viewed as a circle that is the totality of being of the mind-body-spirit complex. And so if you view this circle of experience and unity from a more limited linear standpoint, the higher self is able to look back, as it were, upon all experience gained up to that point and utilize this in order to form a relationship of guidance with the entity at any other point upon that journey. It is indeed true that the higher self potentially has access to direct information about these experiences, and this gives the higher self a certain advantage, or a certain textbook, you might say, to help guide the entity upon their journey. However, we would point out that this relationship between the higher self and the self within incarnation, particularly within the incarnation of third density, is a very finely designed relationship, so that the higher self is not necessarily a direct repository or does not have direct access to the entire repository of experiences up to that point, but instead it has a general idea, an overview of the experiences, and particularly where those experiences lead the seeker, so that the relationship between the self and the higher self is one of a slow and patient building and development. The information sought by the self from the higher self is not necessarily given in a plain, direct way, but it requires the self to come into a certain relationship with the self and come to an understanding of the higher self that sees it not as a separate entity, but rather comes to realize that it is an aspect of the self that is alive within the self, just as you are alive within it. And this shared experience between these two seemingly separated entities can be cultivated by utilizing one's perception to dissolve those barriers of separation, so that the influence of the higher self is more seamless. One may become more attuned to one's higher self, so that the guidance and the lessons flow more naturally and are more apparent to the self. This is a vastly important aspect of the journey of the seeker within third density, particularly those seekers upon the path of service to others. For this realization that the self contains everything that the self needs in order to become the creator and advance upon their journey to that realization is essential in order to truly dedicate oneself to this path of unity. Did we address the extent of your question, my brother? Pretty much. I have just one little follow-up. Within choosing to be positive and choosing to ask through the love and light of the one infinite creator for guidance, when we ask, does this question go to whomever needs to answer it? That may not make a lot of sense, but anyway, that's just as long as you put out the help, the ask for help. Is this basically sufficient? I'm Quo, and I'm aware of the query, my brother. Indeed, we believe, to the extent of your expression of this query, that the simple request made in earnest to the general creation will find its way to the most efficient or effective aspect of the Creator that may respond to that query. For this request and call for help is heard most basically by the Creator, and the Creator responds in many ways. The entity making the request or the call may find themselves in certain circumstances, aligned with certain biases or distortions or beliefs that allow for this call to be responded to in a certain way. by certain entities. You have available to you not just your higher self as an entity available to offer guidance, but indeed each present in this circle and all seekers upon the positive path have already lit a beacon, so to speak, that attracts many entities, particularly those entities wishing to aid the seeker upon the positive path. Some of these entities are aspects of the self that can be considered portions of the higher self that express themselves in specific or particular ways, particularly in polarized ways that might allow for the seeker to develop a stronger connection due to that seeker's unique system of distortions. Some of these entities may not be an aspect of that mind-body-spirit complex totality, but instead are friends or family that have been drawn to the seeker through incarnations, that have found themselves magnetized to the seeker thanks to the unique way that distortions attract similar distortions, particularly upon the metaphysical plane. This is not the full extent of the type of aid available to you, but we hope gives you an idea of the variety of sources of aid to any individual. And if the request is made in a general way for aid and for guidance, any aspect of this guidance system may respond, whether it is a singular entity or whether the guidance system as a whole is able to work together to offer itself to the entity in a way that is, you might say, coordinated by the higher self. We find this a very common way that seekers upon your planet are able to connect with their guidance system and receive guidance in a way that is effective for that seeker. Is there any follow-up to this query, my brother? No, that's perfect, thank you. I am Quo, and we thank you, my brother. At this time, we would transfer this contact to the one known as Kathy. We are Quo. We are those of Quo, and we are now with this instrument. We may ask at this time if there's another query to which we may respond. I have a query, Quo. As you know, in this third density, we tend to identify with things in our life, with our ego, such as jobs and hobbies and relationships, and we tend to wear them like costumes, which provide us with the appropriate catalyst for growth. If these are all shed at once, many of them, how do we know that we're not spiritually bypassing or avoiding catalysts versus creating space to grow spiritually? We are aware of your query, my sister, and it is a most important one at this time in your space-time illusion, where you may find, as within yourself, perhaps reflected in other entities upon the planet at this time who are experiencing what you have described very well, that change within self that is reflected in the change in what may be called the outer image of self, the part of self that interacts with the world through professions and activities, preferences of hobbies, foods to eat, all such things. What you're describing, my sister, is a process of evolution of the mind-body-spirit, in which the spirit, through its growth toward the higher density along the positive path of polarity toward light and love, more and more in your experience, may find that upon this evolutionary path, that these outer experiences that are seen and experienced in an objective way, in a material way in one's life, become less important when compared to the spiritual journey, which is more internal and more of a nature of the essence of the self. That essence of the self may still appreciate certain hobbies or activities, but not just for the sake of the activities. If we may make ourselves clear, what is most important to the entity who is growing upon the path of spiritual expansion and enlightenment is that it is the most important activity or profession or hobby that you could have. And as it grows in importance, it grows in its ability to bless, if you will, the self with joy, with love, with a greater faith that it is in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. That spiritual growth of letting the essence of self, the spiritual self, lead the way will put a person in contact with exactly where they need to be, with what they do to be doing at any given time. We suggest that the idea of letting go of any material attachments to or personal attachment to certain activities that had always been important before may not be something that is to be seen as catalyst or negative in any way. It rather may be understood as the change that is taking place as you rise on your evolutionary pathway, trusting that whatever needs to be retained for enjoyment or for experience will be retained, and it will have a new importance in one's life because it will be known as part of that expanded journey. Does this response to your query meet all your needs for understanding at this time, my sister? Very much so, Quo. Thank you. We thank you, my sister. We are those of Quo. We now take our leave of this instrument and transfer our contact to the one known as Trish. We are those of Quo. Trisha channeling. We are those of Quo, and we are now with this instrument. May we ask if there is a query to which we may speak? Yes, I have a query. How do the residents of the planet that we now reside on know that the name of this planet is Earth? We are those of Quo, and we are aware of your query, my brother. We find this particular query an interesting one, not only in terms of those of Quo, but with this instrument as well, for the very idea of a name or an identity is a potent structure in your experience, a powerful means of creating a seeming separation of the manyness of the creation. That being said, we understand its importance in terms of designating the extensions of the Creator in very tangible means. Those on this planet have long resided here many millennia before the sound vibration complex Earth was spoken or written in the means of your people's understanding now. In fact, this planet has taken on many various titles such as Okaios, Gaia, or Terra. Those on this planet have practiced various exercises, if you will, or experiences to try to understand this land upon which they set their feet and they lay their bodies. And it's through that experience that informs the entities of how to relate to it in a relational way that provides what you call a name. What we mean by this is that the concept of naming comes from a place of inspiration, of the love and light flowing through the entity and towards that which it's attempting to know and understand. In that way, there is an energetic vibration, a sound, a word that is created through this or that inspiration is detected through the energetic field when the entity is relating to this other larger entity. To say that there was a single moment in which the planet was named by another as Earth would be difficult to confirm. However, we suggest that just like the entities gathered in this room have names and are conscious and express themselves through various means, be that energy or language or physical expression, the planet does so itself. And it is in that expression that the planet, as a conscious being, communicated its identity not to one seeming lone individual, but to a collection of individuals. In that way, the planet introduced itself to the many other selves who live alongside it. Now, that may not be through the spoken word, may not have been detectable by the ear. However, it was felt and remembered and deciphered through energetic means. The feeling within the heart, the familiarity of oneness, of family, that this planet is a part of me and I a part of it. It is through that pathway of connection and relation that the name Earth came into being, in terms of making itself known to the minds of those third density entities who reside upon it. It is through that pathway also that the planet expressed itself and identified itself as Gaia and Terra, and its many other names. So to summarize, this communication did not happen all at once. There is not a spark moment. There is simply gradual understanding and relating of entities upon this planet to the planet itself, and through that communication the name Earth was introduced. Is there a follow-up to this query to which we may speak? There is, commonly with channeled material such as this. Other social memory complexes or beings are referred to by name, like the Pleiadians, Arcturians, or even Quo. My question is, what are the people of Earth called when other social memory complexes refer to us? We are those of Quo, and we are aware of your query, my brother. We thank you for this query and provide a bit of chuckle through this instrument, for we are attempting to communicate to her that we do not necessarily identify any extension of the Creator in a singular way. Often, the way we communicate with those on this planet through channelings, we use singularly identifying names to meet you where you are currently. For in our experience, there is so much manyness to the oneness, it is difficult to pinpoint it as a single identity other than the one infinite Creator. As we attempt to communicate through this instrument, we are sending her the impression of a child. This is not to communicate that we identify you as children in a condescending, patronizing way. In fact, we see you as brothers and sisters along the path, the same path we walk along. We are simply at different points in that path. No, instead, to give the impression of a child, we mean to communicate that we See those on this planet as other selves to which we desire to assist and be service to extend our hand, and our hand being our heart and our knowledge in an attempt to guide and witness the entities on this planet's journey. Though that may not answer the question of the name we assign to you, it is but a single facet of the way we would like to relate to you. Along those lines, we see you on this planet as co-creators in this experience, in this illusion. Much in the way that you seek our knowledge, our wisdom, our guidance in an attempt to better understand yourself and others. We also learn and grow through our connection and relationship with those on this planet. So in that way, we see you and identify you as collaborators, partners in this creation of experience. We also see you as beacons. We find your experience and the catalysts that you face and attempt to learn from to be very inspiring. We see and understand the challenge that you face in this heavily veiled density, and we feel so moved by the attempts of many upon your planet to seek the unity that lies underneath that challenge, that heavily veiled experience. To reiterate, we have so many varied thoughts about those upon this planet that all stem from a place of love and desire to serve that it is difficult for us to assign a singular name. We see each of you as creator. We see each of you as the way you identify yourselves. Therefore, we see you as C. But as a people, you are much greater than any singular name other than the one. We apologize if we have been unable to speak specifically to your query. We hope that we have at the very least given some insight into our orientation in terms of how we relate to the idea of names. Is there a follow-up to that query to which we may speak? No, that was beautiful. Thank you, Quo. We are those of Quo, and we are thankful for that question, my brother. At this time, we shall take our leave of this instrument and transfer our contact to the one known as Gary. We are those of Quo. We are those known to you as the principle of Quo, and we greet this circle with hearts full of joy. We see each with tender eyes, knowing that each in this circle carries private struggles and times of darkness, knowing that each in the circle is often unaware of their true natures. We are in the privileged position of being able to see the struggling self and the true essence of self, and we are here to speak not of our glory, but the one's glory, which is you. We are here only to offer humble reminders, and we, and this instrument, appreciate the quality of silence in this group that allows us to form the sound vibration complexes that you may reflect upon the nature of your divine hearts. And at this time, we open this instrument to receive a query from the circle. We are those of Quo. I have a query. It seems that there are so many social memory complexes communicating with channelers on Earth. I'm wondering, first of all, approximately how many different social memory complexes are there communicating with people on Earth, and whether or not they all have the same or similar agendas. We are those of Quo, and I've received your query, my brother, about the social memory complexes communicating with those of your planet. Various numbers rotate through this instrument's mind complex, and he does not feel quite positioned or comfortable to speak to any one of them. We may indicate that the number is in the dozens who work with those of your planet in various ways, and the minority are those groups who work through vocal channels such as you do here in this circle of seeking. But there are others in various places working with various groups. We would ask that you repeat the second portion of your query. We are those of Quo. The second portion of the query directly relates to the welcome message from you at the beginning of each session, in which you advise each person to accept what is acceptable to them right now and to leave the rest. So my question, well, first of all, thank you for the reminder of that. The second part of the question goes to whether or not all social memory complexes have similar goals and purposes, or if maybe they are more tailored to the needs of specific groups of people living here on Earth. We thank you, my brother, for taking the time to repeat your query, for it was not successfully recorded with this instrument and thus provided some noise along the way, shall we say. There are a multiplicity of missions, shall we say, among those members of the Confederation of Planets who work with those of your world, for the needs of your world are many. There is a great spectrum of need and suffering, and there is a great spectrum of talent and understanding among those collaborative members of the Confederation. Thus, some may serve in the dream state, offering many messages of inspiration and awakening. Some there are whose being rings with the sorrow that emanates from your world. If you know what it is to have that faculty you call empathy, whereby a loved one's pain or even a stranger's pain is felt as one's own, you may begin to grasp this experience that we have for those of your planet. And where there are tears, where there is lostness perceived within the self, where there is suffering and anguish and aloneness in particular, we feel this. And with our hearts opened wide, we beam love and light to offer comfort and solace. There are those who serve as teachers of the knowledge of spiritual evolution for those ardent, dedicated students of the mystery, that we may support the journey, that we may assist the seeker and their upward movement toward the Creator. One of the most important and primary ways of the Creator relating to the Creator is in the mode of teacher and learn teacher. It is a progression which never ends. For just as we have our teachers and cycles of teach learning and learn teaching, so too do we seek to respond to those of this planet seeking information and inspiration, light and love in their journey. There are various of ways that we may be of service, including through synchronicity, support, shall we say, not in manipulating circumstances upon your world, but helping that which calls to find that which seeks to respond to the call. It is a magical world. Your experience, far, far beyond what our eyes, bound to the material realm, would have you know. And there are a great many avenues to support spiritual seekers and to support those who are not conscious upon the path. But we seek to offer opportunities wherever it may be helpful, including to those of your second density world who, as you may be aware, have had a challenging time with their third density companions in the span of history. What gives those you know as a confederation the ability to be of any service whatsoever is the calling that is issued from your world on an individual basis, on a group basis, and on a planetary basis. That calling need not be articulated outwardly, vocally. It need not even formulate into a prayer, though indeed a prayer is a way to enhance and strengthen and focus a call. But it is a function of the state of being, the state of need, the vibrating of pain, or a question within the entity that rings our phone, shall we say, allowing us to answer the call as best as possible without attachments to outcome, but with the dedication and fidelity to service that we may help promote this healing, the transformation, the restoration of your peoples from their illusory state to that which they always have been. Is there a follow-up query to this question, my brother? No, thank you very much. We are those of Quo, and thank you, my brother. And at this time, we would transfer our contact to the one known as Jim. We are those of Quo. I am Quo, and once again with this instrument. At this time, we would ask if there is another query to which we may respond. Yes, so I have a question, and thank you for this opportunity to ask a question. Right now, we're in Green Ray, and we notice a lot of planetary changes. For autism seems to be on the rise, and we project that it will continue to rise even as we go into many, many years from now. My question is this: are these dual-bodied citizens here? Are they a fallout of our bellicose actions against the planet from Yellow Ray, or is it something else causing this type of phenomenon? I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother. This is a query which does not have one simple response. The description of the state of mind and beingness that is called autistic or autism is a realm of being which has within it the possibilities of seeing the creation about one in a manner which is not usually experienced by the rest of third density experience of entities that have been upon this planet for a great number of your years here. We would suggest that this is a means by which the entities of a certain type of autism may see the world about them in a manner which is more to the heart of the nature of being. This is to say that the nature of the open heart that feels and experiences unconditional love for those about one is distorted in a manner which adds to the love a desire to cause a perspective of action that can enhance the love of the entire planet through the beingness of the autistic entity. This autistic entity has a kind of experience of the open heart which is in some ways more profound than those who do not have this particular kind of beingness. The autistic entity, in many cases, is quite functional within the third density experience and may go through its life experience in a manner which seems very advanced in some facet of the third density endeavors of being able to share certain visualizations or perceptions that can be useful in every facet of the world in which each third density entity lives and moves and has its being. There are many of the autistic nature that have made advances in such fields that will help the third density planetary population in general to understand more of the quality of all accepting, all forgiving love that can be shared in a manner that aids in the evolution of the planetary population into the fourth density of love and understanding. However, there are also those with what is called autism that are less able to be known and enjoy the third density experience in a way that would be obvious in its enhancement of that experience. These type of entities are more of what you would call the reclusive nature, which seem to keep to themselves that which is given to them to offer in an inner manner to those about them. These types of entities have another type of journey to travel, in which they work with their being and the being of the planetary entity itself, that which you call Mother Earth or Gaia. These entities of the autistic nature that are more reclusive than are able to assist Mother Earth itself in its own evolution into the fourth density of love and understanding, which is now occurring upon your planet. So there are various levels or intensities, shall we say, of the type of offerings which those entities that are called autistic may have to share with the planet Earth. It is a general quality which is not well understood at this time upon your planet, but in the future of your planet, there will be more progress made in understanding this type of designation and appreciating the talents and desires to aid Earth that those with this quality possess. Is there a follow-up query, my brother? There is not, Quo, and thank you. I have a follow-up to that question. Do the entities of the reclusive autistic type, are they aware of the service that they're offering, or is that a subconscious service? I am Quo, and aware of your query. In many cases, the type of entity that is of the reclusive autistic nature is not what you would call consciously aware of this service. It is a service which is offered in an unconscious or subconscious manner, which is indicative of this type of autism. Therefore, they may move to the beat of a different drummer, shall we say. They, however, do have a service that is helpful to the planet itself and are connected to the planet in a manner which is not usually experienced by most third density entities. Is there a further query, my brother? No, thank you. I am Quo, and we thank you, my brother. At this time, we would ask if there is another query that we may transfer the contact to another channel, or if the queries are at an end. I have another query. I am Quo, and we thank you for that acknowledgement, my brother. And at this time, we will transfer this contact to the one known as Austin. We are those of Quo. I am Quo, and am again with this instrument. We ask what the query is to which we may respond. Thank you, Quo. I was wondering, would it be fair to say that there are many entities incarnated on Earth at this time who have vacillated between the paths of service to self and service to others, or who were on the service to self path but are now trying to follow the path of service to others? If so, do you have any words of encouragement, love, or wisdom to help those other selves graduate to fourth density on the path of service to others? I am Quo, and I am aware of the query, my brother, and we offer you our gratitude for the opportunity to speak to this all-important dynamic live upon your planet and within the seekers of your planet regarding what we have called the choice. That choice between the polarities of service to others and service to self. We find that there is some clarifying information to offer in regards to this vacillation that you've spoken to. Each entity within the third density will go through a certain period in which the choice that is the domain of third density is unclear. The energies that pull the entity towards one end of the spectrum of polarization or the other end are not easily perceived by the new or young or inexperienced third density entity. And so the influences of these very essential energies within your density can have varying influences over the entity at any given time. Most entities who find themselves upon one path or the other have gone through a period of vacillation, you may say. For some entities, this is a very prolonged experience. And particularly upon your planet, we find the confusion and difficulty that your populations have in unifying and finding the commonality between one another has exacerbated this confusion. For your planet exists in quite a unique state at this particular nexus, where there are populations of third density entities from other planets who are unable to grasp the thread and thread the needle, you may say, in order to make this choice. And so the energies of these populations that have come to your planet have contributed to a certain environment in which that choice is even less clear and even more difficult to dedicate oneself to. To speak to the portion of your query of entities who may have traveled somewhat further along the path of service to self before dedicating themselves to the other choice of service to others, we do find that this is a somewhat common dynamic for seekers upon your planet. This is due to other types of influences upon your various cultures, particularly the influence of what we have called the Orion Empire and their desire to cultivate the service to self energies upon your planet, and if failing that, to exacerbate the confusion and cause even more disharmony and chaos among the populations. It is not unusual that viewing this choice as a sort of percentage, as we have spoken up before, of 51% service to others or 95% service to self, that entities find themselves far within the middle of this range, having much more of a service to self attitude than a service to others attitude, and perhaps even realizing that they are upon this path that is contracting and absorbing and takes pleasure in the gaining of control and manipulation over others. But we find it quite common that as the entity is perhaps relishing in the power that is felt by these actions, they will be confronted with a certain catalyst that forces them to confront the fact that they are closing a very central aspect of their energy system, that they are choosing to omit the green ray chakra, the very beacon of love within the being of each seeker. Upon this realization that this beacon is being dimmed to a point of complete closure, the entity must confront the reality of their choices, sometimes by the catalyst of discovering that love does exist within them in a limited sense, and their path is asking them to sacrifice that love for their own benefit. This can come through a very traumatic experience, but through this trauma allows the entity to then turn from this closure and dedicate themselves to then cultivating the open heart, rather than closing it, because they realize through this catalyst that it is an essential aspect of their being. These entities who have undergone such a dynamic, which we repeat is somewhat common upon your planet, carry with them a certain responsibility or karma that has accumulated upon their path. They then must balance within their own being and find a path of restitution for the influence of their actions upon others and upon your planet. In terms of how you may support these entities, offering them your own love and your own light, and reiterating the lack of judgment and the divine nature of each entity's journey can help to reduce the, shall we say, guilt or shame or potential baggage that this entity might carry within the self for having realized they have walked this path and have done some level of harm upon this path. Also, reiterating to such individuals who are attempting to heal this within themselves that all entities have made choices in service to self, that all entities have walked some steps in that path and have created ripples of harm that must be resolved and healed and balanced, can help to cause this entity to understand and find unity with all other beings, service to others and service to self, understanding that their path is both infinitely unique and infinitely common with all others. Is there a follow-up to this query, my brother? No, thank you, Quo. It is an honor and a privilege and a joy to be in your presence and the presence of all those other third density entities in the room to whom I love with all my heart. Thank you. I am Quo, and we thank you, my brother, and reflect back the utter honor that we feel in being called to join you in your path of seeking. We again ask if there is another query within the circle that we may transfer this contact in order to address. I am Quo. Finding that the queries within this circle have been exhausted, we will once again transfer the contact to the one known as Jim to offer our closing words for this gathering. We are Quo. I am Quo, and am again with this instrument. It has been another wonderful, joyful, and loving experience that we have been honored to share with you. You have spoken to our hearts once again in a manner that reflects to us the unity of all the creation. We feel that connection with you. We are one with you, and you with us. We walk this journey with you and are so honored to do so. It is always the way of our connection that it expands as we join this group time and time again. It is that which is never static. It is that which grows as the Creator's love through each of you and each of us, and hopefully within the rest of the population, your planet as it does in so many cases now seeded around the world, so that hopefully in your future, as you would call it, this planetary population may move as one to the fourth density of love and understanding. At this time, we would take our leave of this instrument and this group. We would leave you all in the love and light in which we found you, for that is the only place that any really exist. We are known to you as those of Quo, Adonai, Vasu, Boragas. And this concludes the channeling by Quo, delivered on April 8th, 2023. I would love to get your impressions of this particular channeling. You know, we can learn a lot from the answers that Quo gives in what they don't say. There's some questions that are given in this channeling that are not answered. And the question is, why aren't they answering that question? For instance, what do they call the earth? Would the name cause some distortion within us? What if they said Urantia, or what the name that they use? Obviously, it would have an effect, so they didn't give it to us because there would be no problem in giving the name that they would give. The other question that is kind of repeatedly asked is, there are these other social memory complexes obviously channeling. We see channelings on YouTube and in books all the time. So they want to know, how many of these social memory complexes are they all dedicated to the same service? They don't even come close to answering that question. So the question is, why wouldn't they? In, I believe, about a dozen channelings now, Quo has been asked about the Pleiadians, and they always refrain from answering, which makes me wonder about the status of the Pleiadians in relation to those of Quo, Ra, Hatan, or Latwii. Do they have some conflict? Do they have different beliefs? Because some of those channelings are very loving and some are a little bit odd. There are different channelings from different groups, the Arcturians, for instance, and it would be very easy for them just to simply answer, but they didn't. So there's something within that they are choosing not to answer that would create some distortion depending on their polarity. I would love to know what exactly that is. We begin this channeling with a discussion of the simple idea of Om. I have been guilty of looking at the Om and saying, oh, it's so simple. You know, I have an Om meditation on the channel. Please Om with me through that meditation. And I have found the power of the Om, but sometimes I will say, geez, this seems too simple. There must be something more. But clearly that vibration is helpful, and they indicate that it designates the oneness with all creation, and that rod uses the Om on a regular basis. I would love to know what particular portion of this channeling that you enjoyed or had questions about. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com, and welcome to The Reality Revolution.